This is Gerald Bleicher's application for a full-year sabbatical for sustainability. I've been thinking about what Frank said on the first day of school, which he adopted from the Cushing Academy's website. More than any century before it, this one, the 21st, will change our way of life beyond measure. At Overlake, we have embraced this new era as we prepare our students for success in college and in life. Yet at the same time, as a key launching point for young men and women entering a transformed and transforming world, Overlake offers something both radical and inevitable: the chance to focus on subjects that matter, engage on a personal level with the issues arising in the world, and emerge prepared for leadership in the 21st century. For students and parents who understand that our world is changing, now is the time for a school like this. Tomorrow is here. Overlake is ready. Unfortunately, I don't think that Overlake is ready. We are preparing students for yesterday's world that we grew up in, not tomorrow's world where our students will live. And today's world is facing a sustainability crisis. Many aspects of our world just can't continue as they have been, such as population growth, oil consumption, water usage, food production, economic growth, and climate change. Sustainability will be one of the defining issues of our students' generation. Overlake says that it has a commitment to sustainability and going green, but we are not doing enough in the academic curriculum. Every student that leaves Overlake must understand how our world will change and be prepared for the challenges they will face. Much of the growth and progress that our world has experienced over the past 100 years is based on the unsustainable consumption of resources. Human population has been growing exponentially and is now reaching a staggering 7 billion people. Even if each person consumes the same amount of resources as their parents, total consumption must grow exponentially just to keep up with the growing population. This population growth has been fueled by our consumption of non-renewable fossil fuels such as oil, coal, and natural gas. Because these are all finite resources, it is impossible to continue their consumption at an exponential rate. At some point, we will reach a maximum rate of extraction called the peak. The United States reached our peak production of oil in 1970. And even though we went on a drilling spree like none other in our history, and technology has made fantastic advances, our production of oil continues to decline each year. Over 50 other countries have also passed their peak of oil production, including some major producers such as Mexico, Venezuela, Norway, Libya, and the UK. When we reach global peak oil, we won't be out of oil. In fact, we will have used about half the global supply. We are nearing the end of cheap, easy-to-access oil. We can see evidence of this in the fact that it is now profitable to drill offshore in deep water. We are even using lots of natural gas energy just to turn the tar sands in Canada into usable liquid oil. We don't do these things because we enjoy the technical challenge. We must use this harder to extract, more expensive oil because we've consumed all of the low-hanging fruit. After peak oil, global production will decrease each year as it approaches zero. But even at this point, we won't be out of oil. The oil left in the ground just won't be economical to extract. Of course, technology will improve, but if it costs you $300 to extract a barrel of oil that you can only sell for $290, oil production won't be profitable. Even if someone were willing to pay you $320 for your barrel of oil, when it takes more energy to extract the oil than you get from the oil, it would be a net loss of energy and will leave that remaining oil in the ground. Oil production has been increasing for the past 100 years because demand has been increasing. When we reach peak oil, demand will continue to rise, but production won't be able to keep up. When production can't keep up with demand, this shortage leads to a price increase. As the gap between demand and production increases, so will the price. So if you think that $4 per gallon of gasoline is expensive now, just wait until you have to pay $10, then $20, and then $50 per gallon. This will wreak havoc on our economy and our way of life. Some people have been aware of global peak oil since 1970, and yet we continue to build our society and economy around the incorrect assumption that we will always be able to pump more oil out of the ground next year than we did this year. We are dependent on oil for our transportation, plastics, synthetic rubber, lubricants, synthetic fibers, and medicines. Even our food production depends on oil for tractors, transporting food, and using fertilizers and pesticides from petrochemicals. 1 calorie of food produced in the United States requires 10 calories from oil. The fact that our current food industry is not sustainable is a scary thought indeed. Economic growth is so vital to our economy that a recession is defined as 3 consecutive quarters without growth. We depend on its growth to provide more jobs and a return on our investments. Economies grow when more products are manufactured, shipped, and consumed, and all of this takes energy. This graph shows that the growth in GDP is tied to our increase in energy use. Global energy has been growing at about 2%. This might sound small, but remember that anything growing at a fixed percentage is growing exponentially and will double in a fixed amount of time. This doubling time can be found by dividing the number 70 by the growth rate, so our energy consumption will double every 35 years at this rate. Global GDP has been growing at 2.9% and will double every 24 years. Because economic growth is closely tied with growth of energy consumption and other resource consumption, it is also not sustainable. Growth in our economy depends on low-cost energy, and we can see the end of cheap oil. Most Overlake students are not fully aware of our sustainability crisis. I've been trying to add these issues to my already overpacked 10th grade science curriculum over the past few years, but it hasn't been sufficient. While looking over the review packet for the spring final exam last year, one of my best students asked, "What is peak oil?" At that moment, I felt like I had failed as a teacher. If one of my strongest students leaves Overlake without being aware of how we are living unsustainably, she will be blindsided when we reach peak oil and life as we know it potentially unravels. For my sabbatical, I would like to revamp the entire 10th grade science curriculum to emphasize solutions to sustainability issues such as population growth, resource consumption, energy use, peak oil, water use, food production, climate change, and the economy. This will prepare every Overlake student for the challenges that they will face. I would also like to develop a new course that we have never offered, AP Environmental Science. This full-year course would replace the Environmental Science semester elective that I now teach. When all 10th graders have been exposed to the basics of these sustainability issues, they can choose to go into more depth with AP Environmental Science. I will complete a week-long workshop with the College Board to develop an AP course that meets their standards. I have spoken with Lisa and she is supportive of these changes to our science curriculum. I would also like to become even more of an expert on sustainability issues and educate the greater Overlake community using online videos and resources. Making sustainability a cornerstone of our academic curriculum will also help Overlake to stand out among other independent schools. It is far more effective to prepare for a challenging situation in advance than it is to react after a crisis. Transitioning away from fossil fuels to alternative renewable energy will take a lot of time, money, and energy. We can make peak oil painless by having renewable energy replace oil as the production of oil decreases. This can only happen if we begin the transition well before reaching peak. It will take an enormous amount of energy to build all of the wind turbines and solar panels that we'll need to replace oil. I will work with several organizations to become more of an expert on sustainability issues. Issues like peak oil are so complicated because they involve not only science and technology, but economics, politics, and social issues. I will work with the Rocky Mountain Institute, a think and do tank founded by Amory Lovins in 1982. This nonprofit has a $12 million budget to map and drive the transition from coal and oil to efficiency and renewables. I am also applying for an internship with the Post-Carbon Institute, which has assembled 29 of the world's leading experts on social, economic, and environmental sustainability. These include Wes Jackson, founder of the Land Institute, Majora Carter, economic consultant and environmental justice advocate, and Bill McKibben, founder of 350.org. Richard Heinberg is a senior fellow and author of many books including The Party's Over, Oil, War, and the Fate of Industrial Societies, Power Down, The Post-Carbon Reader, Peak Everything, and most recently, The End of Growth, Adapting to Our New Economic Reality. The Institute's goal is to lead the transition to a more resilient, equitable, and sustainable world. I will utilize the Institute's resources to develop the 10th grade science curriculum to benefit all Overlake students, to create the AP Environmental Science course, and to create online material to educate the general public. Because 40% of our energy is consumed in buildings, I will learn about designing and constructing net zero energy buildings by working with the Passive House Institute. The Passive House concept represents today's highest energy standard, with the goal of reducing heating and cooling energy by 90%. Working with these organizations will give me access to information and resources which will allow me to develop my curriculum around sustainability issues. If our students are to be successful in their careers, content in their lives, and leaders in their communities, they will need to know how to live sustainably. Reaching peak oil is inevitable. The only uncertainty lies in when we will reach it. There is much debate surrounding the date of peak oil because it is such a complicated issue. For example, these models show how the rate of decline can affect the date of peak oil. The production curves marked with a red X all assume the same amount of ultimately recoverable resource of 2.8 trillion barrels. The area under the production curves must be the same for all three curves because the area represents the volume of oil. By changing the post-peak decline rate from 2 to 4 to 6%, the date of peak changes from 2012 to 27 to 2032, respectively. This shows that pushing the date of peak oil further into the future only creates a more painful post-peak scenario as production must drop sharply. The UK Energy Research Centre released a report that reviewed over 500 studies from organizations such as Shell Oil, BP, ExxonMobil, OPEC, and the US Energy Information Administration. They analyzed industry databases and compared global supply forecasts in an attempt to bring some clarity to this debate. The report finds that a peak in conventional oil production before 2030 appears likely, and there is a significant risk of a peak before 2020. Given the lead times required to both develop substitute fuels and improve energy efficiency, this risk needs to be given serious consideration, but forecasts that delay the peak beyond 2030 require assumptions that are at best optimistic and at worst implausible. It is so easy to be lulled into thinking that everything is fine. I can fill up my car with gas whenever I want, food is cheap and plentiful, and businesses are still making money. But just because things are fine today doesn't mean that they will be tomorrow. Most people don't have the larger perspective on how these global issues affect each other. Future generations will eventually look back on the age of oil as a brief time of cheap energy, booming economies, massive consumption, and high standards of living. I gave up teaching AP Physics 2 years ago so I could teach sustainability issues to my environmental science class. But unfortunately, this has only exposed about 15% of the student body to these issues. I want to focus the 10th grade science curriculum on solutions to sustainability issues so that 100% of Overlake students are prepared for their future. Any way you look at it, peak oil will occur well within the lifetime of our students. It is our responsibility to prepare Overlake students for their future. I feel compelled to take on this challenge, yet I do not have the time to develop this curriculum while I am teaching full-time and raising a family. This sabbatical will provide me with the time and the access to resources that I need to help fulfill Overlake's mission. Please allow me the opportunity to make the greatest impact I can by spreading awareness of sustainability issues and educating people about solutions. The future of our students, our children and grandchildren, depends on all of us living more sustainably. Thank you for your consideration.